Hello, Eros Mamas. This episode is how to turn on sexually when you're exhausted. This episode actually came out of two things that happened to me yesterday. One is we finally got the kids to sleep. It was 8 p.m. If you've listened to this episode or this podcast, you know I have a 6-month-old baby and a almost 3-year-old girl. And so our days are full of toddler and baby. And then we're also hosting my husband's parents, my in-laws, for 3 weeks. And so once everyone went to sleep, I was like, oh, okay, I can relax. And then James starts kissing me and touching me in that way that is not is not an accident. There's a hope or an agenda sounds a little bit too strict, but you know what it means. You know when your partner's touching you in a way that like they're initiating intimacy. And to be honest, my first response was, "Oh no, I can't. I don't want to. I don't want to." Fast forward 45 minutes and we're like deep in a passionate moment. But I'm going to walk you through this episode how we got from like totally burned out and not at all interested into this deep, passionate moment. Um, because if you're listening to this, you might also have moments when you're just not feeling it. Like your desire feels as far away as the Arctic pole, and you're about as cold as an igloo. And it's just not there. But at the same time, you probably also want to maintain the passion in your relationship or maintain access to your own erotic self. So how do you do that when your body is not you're not feeling warmed up? Put it that way. The other thing that happened yesterday that inspired this is I was talking to a friend of mine who's pregnant, and her partner have not been making love because she's feeling, uncomfortable in her body and her body's changing and she's tired and they just moved houses. So there's a lot of overwhelm in their lives right now. And yeah, it's just so relatable, right? Like I imagine you might have moments like this as well. So whether you're a mama or you're pregnant or you're just a woman who um, is working or sometimes is exhausted, so that would be probably most women, this episode is for you. And I want to talk about like why is it so hard to open sexually in those moments? Like what is actually happening inside of the woman that makes it so challenging? And then I'll share what I see women tend to do, what the downfall is of that, and what I'd actually recommend. So by the time you're done with this episode, you're going to have an action plan for next time you are in these moments. Okay? Cool. Love a good plan. It's the Capricorn in me. I've got like 7 planets in Capricorn. I don't know if you're into astrology, but that basically means I am very planned, structured, and a bit of a tight ass. Okay, so why is it so hard to open sexually? Um, it's hard to open sexually if you spent the day in your head, either from working or thinking about other people's needs or analyzing, and you haven't spent a lot of time in your body. And that is true for most of us. Most of us live in quite an intellectual world, so it can be hard to drop back into your body. It can also be the case if you're a mom and you're spending a lot of time thinking about, if your baby's pooping and did your toddler eat and why your child hates school all of a sudden. And so a lot of your attention is outside of yourself. And in order to feel pleasure and to open sexually, your attention has to come back to yourself and back into your body. And that requires activation energy. So it can feel like work. Like what I hear from a lot of women in this spot is, oh, it feels like too much work to get ready for sex after being exhausted. Because it's a shift, right? A shift of consciousness from being in your mind or being tending to others to being in your body and being rooted in your belly, your hips, your pussy. So that requires some energy. The other thing is it can feel like if you spent the whole day in mom mode or in work mode, it's a big jump to being in lover mode. Like I think about it as a car. Like your car might be going 0 miles per hour. Like it's cold, it's in the shop, it hasn't been run in days, maybe weeks, maybe months, who knows? And it's you're trying to get your car started from a really cold start. I don't know enough about cars to really make this analogy go. But we're just gonna run with it, all right? Um, yeah, so you're going 0 miles an hour. You're like, you're not a sexual being, you're not in your sexual self. And then if your partner starts to initiate, a lot of women will feel like, oh my God, now I have a pressure to have sex. Like I have to go to 100 miles an hour, basically, and become this like wildly orgasmically open sexual being. And from 0 miles an hour, cold start to 100 miles an hour, wildly open and orgasmic is a huge jump. And often, as soon as their partner starts touching them, they see this huge jump and it feels unmanageable or not possible. Can you relate? Let me know. So, what do a lot of women do in that spot? Well, I think there's kind of this cultural trope of like, he needs sex. Like, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, like this feeling of like, well, my partner needs sex. So I need to put out in order to keep him satisfied so he doesn't start to wander and cheat on me. Um, and I really hate this narrative because it really discounts the female's erotic self. Because the truth is, like, if you're an adult, like most of us enjoy lovemaking. And we enjoy lovemaking because pleasure feels good and connection feels good. And so it's not like your partner needs sex and you don't. That's actually not true. It's like both people can enjoy pleasure and connection. And also it's I don't know if sex is a need so much as like an optional add-on. I think when we think our partner needs sex, it can become a big burden and it adds on to the mental emotional load that she already feels like, okay, now not only am I tending to my kids all day, but now I have this partner that needs something from me, right? Rather than um, we could do this shared activity that we both enjoy. That feels to me like a lot more spacious. I wonder how it feels to you. So a lot of women in that spot are like, okay, he needs sex. I don't feel like it. What do I do? I'll just do one of those obligatory blowjobs. Have you ever done that? Where you just start going down on him because you're like, he needs a release. He needs sex or pleasure. I don't want to do it. This is the least vulnerable way that I can satisfy his need. I hear so many women do this. And yeah, or she might have sex, but fake being into it. So pretend like, oh, yeah, I'm so into it. And that creates disconnect between both of them because she's faking it. She's not being honest with him about her actual body signals. And he's not, if he believes it, then he's not learning how to trust and listen to her actual body signals. And if he doesn't believe it, then it's, can create a real point of tension. The other thing that she can do is just tell him, no, I'm not into it. I've got a headache. I'm too tired. And a lot of women will do this, and it can create a real point of tension between partners. Um, the partner that's saying no can start to feel guilty or ashamed or like, what's wrong with me that I'm not into it? Why does my partner seem so into it, but I'm not? And the partner that is initiating and is getting a no consistently can feel hurt and rejected. Um, and it's not always the man or the woman. Sometimes it's the woman that's initiating more and getting rejected. So it really goes both ways. But either way, it's a bit painful. So what do you do when your partner's kind of initiating and you're exhausted? Like, where do you go? And how do you awaken your sexual nature when you don't feel like it? And while doing that, how do you also build trust with your body? Because one of the things about faking it or doing it for him is you're saying yes when your body's actually a no. And what that does is it will make your body not able to trust you because your body is always speaking either a yes, like an opening, oh yes, that feels so good. I want more of that. Delicious, right? That's your yes. or a no, like, don't like it. Oh, hurts, not comfortable, not interested. Right. And the more you can listen to those subtle signals from your body and speak them, the more you build trust with your body. And the more your body comes to trust that you are listening and acting in accordance with it. And then you can get turned on more easily and your sex can go deeper. And it feels a lot better to have that alignment between what your body's saying and what your words are saying. So I'm just realizing like, okay, this is actually a lot of content. So if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, this is a big journey. Like I really don't have a lot of trust with my body, or I really feel like my sexual nature has been hibernating for way too long and I need help reawakening it. That's what I do the one-on-one mentorships with. So that's a great spot to work one-on-one with me. We can go really deep into your personal circumstance, what's coming up for you, and give you specific practices on how to build this body trust and awaken your eroticism. So the info on that is going to be in the show notes. Okay, but I'll give you a little taste on this episode, just so you have some action items if you're in this spot. You ready? Okay, so the first thing, and this is literally what I did last night. So I'm just gonna walk you through it because it's a really great recipe for how to turn on when you don't feel like it. So the first thing I would say is take a solo moment. So I had just breastfed the baby to sleep and I'd just gotten the kids to sleep. And so I just needed a moment to transition from mom to lover. So what I did is I got up, I brushed my teeth, I took some deep breaths. I stretched out a little, opened up my chest, and just took a moment to come back to my own body. And in doing that, that really, really helps kind of shake off the caretaking, the mom mode, and put on a different archetype, which I would need to become more of a lover. Second thing I did is we went out. I talked to James and I'm like, I so want to connect with you intimately. I'm really willing, and I don't feel like it yet. Like my body is not, I'm not turned on. I don't feel like it yet, but I'm willing to become into it. But in the meantime, can we take pressure off the table? Like, can we take obligation towards sex or orgasm off the table so that I don't feel like this has to get to an end goal? And he said yes. So that's really huge, is like the willingness to take the goal-oriented nature off the table. And if you've done any of my couples programs, you know that that's a huge theme, is to take the goal off and to enter into eroticism goalless, because that helps you both be more present with what's happening right now rather than feeling pressure that this has to go somewhere. That was the first thing we did. The next thing we did is like, okay, let's set a time container for this connection. So we set a 30-minute container. Your time container could also be 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and literally set a timer. So my body knows, okay, I'm going to be connecting with him for X amount of time. The time container helps totally relax into the moment, so that you can both be really in it and know that this is not like a thing that's going to go on forever. It's just inside of this container. And this is something I really got from my time with orgasmic meditation, which is an amazing 15-minute partnered practice. If you listen to some of the other episodes, I share more about the practice and what I've gotten from it. But yes, the power of time containers, it really, what it does is it lowers the vigilance part of your brain. And so for a woman to get turned on, her vigilance has to go down in order to enter into an orgasmic state. And your vigilance goes up when you feel pressure to get somewhere. You don't know how long this is going to go on. The kids could wake up at any moment. Maybe you don't have a lock on the door and your in-laws could walk in. Like all of those things make your vigilance go up. And when your vigilance goes up, your eroticism goes down. And so doing things that create safety so that you don't have to be hypervigilant is so helpful. So, locking the door, having a time container, taking the pressure off, making sure everyone's fully asleep. Those are things that can help you relax and be more present into the moment. Okay, so that's what we did. We set our time container. We took sex off the table, 30 minutes. And then the first thing we did is focus on relaxing and breathing deeply. So, pleasure comes through a relaxed body. Like it is almost impossible to feel pleasure when you're all tight and tense. And so, if you want to access pleasure, one of the best ways to do that is to start to bring your awareness into your body and consciously relax. The way I do this is deep breath, all the way down into my belly, maybe a deep breath down into my pussy. I might relax my jaw, my lips, bring attention to my throat, my chest, my solar plexus, and my belly. And as you're listening to this, I invite you to relax with me. Just take a moment, no matter if you're driving or cooking or whatever, just take a moment to relax in with me. Deep breath in and out. And as you do this, just see if you can notice a sensation or two. See if you can find something that feels good. Like for me right now, it's the pause at the end of the exhale and the stillness. Another thing I find a lot with mothering is there's so much stimulation all the time that often I have to cut out stimulation in order to rediscover my pleasure. So like closing my eyes, for example, cutting out visual stimulation, help me come back to my body, or covering my ears to cover any auditory stimulation, or just laying down and doing nothing for a minute and taking some deep breaths. This can help me get rid of some of the overwhelm and overstimulation and come back into my body and into my pleasure. So that was the first thing we did. And we sat across from each other and looked into each other's eyes and took deep breaths. And that's really all we did. And then the next thing we did is I asked him to try a few different types of touch, and I would give some honest responses from my body through sound. So, he tried putting his hand on my heart, and we took a deep breath together, and that felt good. I was like, oh, yeah, my heart. So I went, right? Like, I'm like, yes, that feels good. And then a moment later, like, he grabbed my breast, but I wasn't quite ready. And I went, right? So that was a, wait, I'm not ready response. And then a moment later, he scratched my head, and I was like, oh, yeah, yes. And then we kissed a bit, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's another yes. And then a moment later, he did something like he was doing tickly touch, but I didn't like tickly touch. I wanted really grounding, firm touch to help me get into my body. And so when he was doing tickly touch, I was like, right? So these little sounds and this body language, I was tuning into my body moment to moment and knowing what is a yes and what's a no, and what's bringing pleasure and what is bringing contraction, and then expressing that through my body language and through my sound. And this, again, if you've done any of my couples courses, this is a huge skill of the feminine, is how to be responsive like this. And it's something that you can learn and you can train yourself to do. And it's so powerful because it's powerful for you because it helps your attention be tuned into your own body and learn what is giving me pleasure right now, and what can I open to and what can I say yes to. And it is so good for your partner because then he can learn to read your body and play your body like an instrument and become a masterful lover of your body. And because becoming an amazing lover is not a thing you learn in a vacuum. It's a thing you two learn together by watching and listening to each other's bodies. So that is huge. And it also will completely change your sex life and really help you to stay connected moment to moment and give each other feedback without using a lot of words. You can literally just do this through sound. One thing I would say is if nothing he's doing is feeling that great, if everything's see if you can find one thing that feels a bit good. Like maybe his deep breath feels a bit good, or his hand on your neck feels a bit good, and leaning into what does feel good. Um, yeah, because that will help you. If you keep tracking like where the pleasure is, it will be easier to continue to open to the pleasure. So we did that for, I don't know, a while until the timer went off. And by the time the timer went off, like we were both fully into it. I was like, I felt turned on. I felt like aroused. My body felt soft. He was into it. It was so amazing. I'm like, wow, there's my juicy self. And here's the best part. When the timer goes off, you stop. And I even was like, are you sure you want to stop? And he's like, yep, that's the end of the time container. And there's something so hot about like knowing it's going to be 30 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, like really stopping at that timer. And I was like, oh, it feels so good to feel my desire, but not feel like it immediately has to be acted upon or that now I'm turned on, it has to go somewhere. When the timer went off, he was like, okay, good night. And then kissed me and we went to, and like, when because we sleep separate, went our separate ways. Uh, and it was so hot. And I'm like, wow, to leave at the peak of the sensation rather than pushing for more and more and more. It's been amazing. By the way, if you're like, this episode is really helpful and I would really love my partner to have this information, highly recommend sending it to your partner so that they can listen to this as well. And you two can be on the same page about this moment, because some of these ideas are pretty radical. Not very many people are talking about how to turn on like this, and it really helps to both get the information so you're on the same page. Okay, so those were the steps that we did yesterday, and it was amazing to feel how I could go from totally like turned off, exhausted, depleted to totally juicy and turned on in less than a half hour by following these steps and by having this kind of space container and space for exploration and for being in our bodies together. It was so connecting. And I so hope that it serves you next time you're in this spot and that you find it really helpful. I'll just go through the steps one more time and then, yeah, we'll close out. Okay. So what do you do when you're feeling exhausted, not turned on? How do you open yourself back up sexually? First one is take a moment to transition from mom mode to lover and come back to your own body. The next one is take the goal off the table. You're not trying to push to get to sex or push to get to orgasm. Take it off the table. Next one is set a time container. How long will you two be in sensual exploration together? The fourth one is focus on relaxing and breathing deeply. Imagine you're melting like butter in the sun. The fifth one is to give an honest response from your body through your body language and your sounds about where your yes is and where your no is. And the sixth one is to pay particular attention to what feels good, what you are a yes to, and follow that trail of breadcrumbs. And that is the steps I'd recommend. Let me know. You can either send me a note on Instagram or leave a review. I would love to hear what you got from this. And if you're like, wow, this sounds great, but I need way more support to make this actually a part of my daily life, definitely check out the mentorship. I love supporting women one-on-one on how to balance being a mother and a lover and her own erotic woman. And how do you hold all of these things? And how do you be a mother that still has access to her erotic fire and her passion and her juiciness and her vibrancy, even while spending most of her day in service of little ones and little beings. So, no easy feat. You can do it. And I'm right here with you every step of the way. Okay. Big hugs. Bye.